All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today in person or remotely. I'm Justin Domer. I'm the Deputy Secretary of Community Development at FloridaCommerce. I'm glad to have the opportunity today to share with you some about the process of the 23 and 24 storms funding and the state action plan that we recently posted for public comment. And then we're also looking forward to receiving some public comment from you all here today. Part of what we're going to go through is I'll introduce our team up here with me. Then we'll do a brief program timeline about the state action plan. We'll show a map of the counties that are eligible to receive assistance from the state of Florida. And then we'll also go through the process of how we develop the action plan. That includes the proposed programs and then also the application process for the future programs. So up here with me today, we have Garnet Nevels, who is our Deputy Bureau Chief of our subrecipient programs in the Office of Long-Term Resiliency, and then Leisha Behenna, who is the Bureau Chief of the subrecipient programs of the Office of Long-Term Resiliency, and then Leo Garcia, who is in two roles, Interim Assistant Deputy Secretary of Community Development and the Director of Broadband. And then Tom Hartman is our Bureau Chief over our Long-Term Resiliency housing programs. And then Audrey is the Deputy Bureau Chief in that office as well. Okay. To start things off, I'll give you a little bit of background on what our office does. So FloridaCommerce is the governor-designated state authority responsible for administering all of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD, the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery and Mitigation funds that are awarded to the state. That does exclude funds that are directly allocated by HUD to what is referred to as entitlement communities. And there are 9 counties and 2 cities that also received funding for the 23-24 storms. So they got that directly. The Office of Long-Term Resiliency utilizes the CDBG DR funds to support long-term resiliency for housing, infrastructure, and economic development in Florida communities that have been impacted by disasters. These funds are intended to be funding of last resort. So what that means is unmet needs that are still remaining after FEMA dollars have been exhausted, private insurance, and if there were any Small Business Administration SBA loans, those all have to be exhausted before these funds can be utilized. And then FloridaCommerce, we prioritize award allocations to those most vulnerable populations in the state. So why are we here? So I'll give you some reasons that we're here today. HUD announced that the state of Florida would receive CDBG DR funds to support long-term resiliency and mitigation efforts following those 23 and 24 storms. While working with our impacted communities, we've developed the action plan, which guides how the funding will address the unmet recovery and mitigation needs following the 23-24 storms, which those that are eligible for these funds are Hurricanes Idalia, Debbie, Helene, and Milton, as well as the 2024 North Florida tornadoes that happened here in Tallahassee. Next slide. So the most important part of why we're holding the public hearings is that it does help us understand those unmet needs of Floridians and communities that have been directly impacted by those 23-24 storms. As we implement programs funded by more than the $925 million for our eligible 47 counties, it is crucial that we provide opportunities for input from communities around the state. So again, we're having the public hearing so we can hear directly from folks in the different communities. Over the last couple of months, we have visited all 47 of those impacted communities, or 47 impacted counties, and some of the municipalities inside of that. Everybody here at the table has been a part of those meetings. In addition, we also held 12 public workshops, 6 for citizens and 6 for stakeholders. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that over to Tom and Audrey for the next slide.
Sure. So next slide, we'll take a look at the timeline of funding and how we get from receiving the allocation announcement notice until we're able to implement some of our programs. So starting off with the first step is the publication of that allocation announcement notice from HUD. After that, there's the unmet needs assessment, which our team does in conjunction with some of our public partners. We'll develop the action plan, which is our strategy, what we're going to do, what programs we're going to run. Third step, which was during the outreach portion or phase, the life cycle, was that action plan. Make sure the public is informed what we want to do. That's where we are right now, 30-day public comment period. That action plan is up on our website. We posted that on March 19th, runs for 30 days. The fifth step will include the incorporation of final edits and a review based on that input from the public. All of that feedback, and following that, next step will be to send that action plan to HUD. HUD will have 45 days to review that action plan, and following financial certification implementation plan is then submitted to HUD 135 days after the Federal Register is published every 5th year. Once all of that has occurred, we'll be able to execute our grant agreement with HUD, and that's pretty much at that point in time we can start to open application cycles for our programs. Next slide, please. So FloridaCommerce has received a total allocation of more than $4.3 billion since 2017 to administer community development block grant disaster recovery and mitigation funds to communities impacted by the following storms: Hurricane Hermine and Matthew, Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Michael, Hurricane Sally, Hurricane Ian, a separate allocation for mitigation funding, and the newest allocation for the 2023 and 2024 storms. To date, we have expended more than 1.1 billion CDBG-DR dollars helping Floridians and communities recover. Next slide, please. So on this slide, you'll find some important dates around the timeline of the 23 and 24 storm funding. January 16th, HUD announced that the state of Florida would receive more than $925 million in allocated funds to serve the 47 storm-impacted Florida counties. Currently, during February and March, ongoing meetings are being held with all 47 impacted counties. This is occurring in tandem with these community and stakeholder workshop meetings. We're hosting these community workshops early in the process to help develop our first draft of our action plan, which is published on the website. After the 30-day public comment period, we'll incorporate that feedback and submit the final version to HUD if there are changes made to the draft. Next slide, please. So we've talked about the timeline for developing the state action plan, but what is an action plan? The state action plan provides a high-level strategy for how the funding will be used to address unmet recovery and resiliency needs following disasters. We're the lead state agency leading these efforts to create the action plan, which is developed by required input from stakeholders, community members, community leaders, and community-based organizations to help ensure the impacted communities recover from the 2023 and 2024 storms. These workshops we've hosted and throughout these public hearings, first being today, are how we receive the feedback from you. The action plan is due to HUD on April 21st, 2025. The current ongoing 30-day public comment period will conclude prior to the action plan submission. Yeah, most impacted and distressed areas. On this slide, you'll find a list and a map that shows the counties that are state designated mid areas as well as the HUD designated mid areas. This can also be found on our website. So here you can see the list of the 47 counties. That list showcased the state most impacted and distressed areas as well as the HUD most impacted and distressed areas. Sort of the difference between the two. HUD mandates that 80% of the funding is spent in those HUD designated mid areas, and 20% of the funding can be spent in those state designated mid areas. Prioritizing the state of Florida's most vulnerable populations in the mid areas impacted by the 23 and 24 storms is a central focus of the state of Florida's action plan for disaster recovery. As detailed in the unmet needs assessment, roughly 79% of the remaining 23 and 24 storms unmet needs are in the housing sector. $3 billion is what that needs assessment returned, 4% in infrastructure, around $147 million, and 17% in the economy. Returns were $675 million. These figures include only the 47 most impacted and distressed counties identified in this action plan. As the impact of some of these storms is relatively recent, recovery is ongoing, and all unmet needs may not yet be realized. Currently available data sources may not yet fully reflect the needs of the impacted communities as required by HUD. In addition to readily available data, we've conducted extensive outreach to citizens and local governments to determine what needs are most urgent in the impacted counties. Despite these percentages calculated using available data, feedback continually reflected a need for funding to be directed to addressing unmet housing and infrastructure needs in the impacted communities. Based on this assessment, it's clear that the current funding is insufficient to meet the total unmet needs for the state, and that funds must be prioritized towards implementation of housing programs and infrastructure needs. However, should HUD make additional funding available in the future, FloridaCommerce may incorporate additional programs should unmet needs remain. Next slide, please. So here on this slide, you'll see the breakdown of how the unmet needs assessment sort of informed our allocation towards our proposed activities. There's a 5% set aside for administration of the grant, a small 2% set aside for planning related to the CDBG-DR grant. And then you can see those allocation amounts for the proposed housing, infrastructure, and economic revitalization activities, totaling $925 million, with $434 million going to the housing program and $425 million going towards a proposed infrastructure repair program. So I'm going to turn it over to Audrey Irwin, my deputy chief within the Office of Long-Term Resiliency.
Thanks, Tom. Go to the next slide. All right, proposed programs. Effectively utilizing this limited federal funding across 47 counties and ensuring funding is directed towards the most urgent needs is paramount. To repair storm damaged housing, increase housing stock, and reduce risk to existing housing, a proposed allocation of $434 million to address housing unmet needs would be distributed to one housing program, which is the Housing Repair and Replacement Program, or otherwise known as the HRP. Additionally, feedback provided to FloridaCommerce through a stakeholder survey, stakeholder workshops, and listening sessions with local governments expressed a great need for infrastructure projects. To address this need, a proposed allocation of $425 million to address unmet infrastructure needs would be distributed through two programs: the Infrastructure Repair Program, otherwise known as IRP, and the Hazard Mitigation Grant Match Program, or otherwise known as HMGMP. Next slide. The HRP will assist and prioritize the most vulnerable homeowners and property owners impacted by the 23 and 2024 storms through the repair, reconstruction, or replacement of their storm-damaged homes, including replacement of mobile homes. This program will most directly benefit individuals in the mid areas of the state by repairing, reconstructing, or replacing storm-damaged single-family owner-occupied homes and rental properties. Applicants to this program will be prioritized based on vulnerabilities such as income, disability, age, and presence in a mid-area. Rebuild Florida has deployed a housing assessment for 2023 and 2024 storm-impacted homeowners, which can be found on our 2023 and 2024 website. Potentially eligible impacted homeowners may be invited to complete a brief survey. Survey responses may assist in evaluating respondents' potential eligibility for program assistance, as well as help identify outstanding needs of impacted homeowners. In the coming weeks, we will offer those interested in assistance through our Housing Repair and Replacement Program to fill out our pre-application survey to help us assess your needs. We are currently developing the survey. Once the survey is finalized, it will be posted on our webpage. If you are interested in housing assistance, please visit 2023 and 2024 Storms webpage. If anyone has questions about the pre-application survey today, we invite you to come forward once the workshop concludes, and one of our team members will be happy to assist in answering your questions. You may also contact FloridaCommerce at 850-717-8404 for assistance. Applicants must have legal ownership of the 2023 and 2024 storm damaged property to be eligible to take part in the survey and the program. For anyone here who rents their home, we have resources for you too. Please visit the department's Community Services and Community Action Agency web pages. You can access these web pages by scanning the QR codes on your handout. Next slide. Recognizing that the $334 million will likely not address all needs, at-risk and vulnerable populations with the greatest needs will be prioritized. At a minimum, 70% of program funds must meet the LMI national objective. FloridaCommerce will prioritize very low and low-income households with the greatest prioritization for households with incomes less than 80% of area median income. Households with one or more of the following characteristics will be prioritized and invited to apply in the earliest applicable phase. Households with members that are older than age of 62, or members with children that are younger than age of 18, or households with special needs or special accommodation needs, such as disabled household members. Next slide. After the state action plan is submitted to HUD and approved, the team will begin designing our program to meet the needs of community members. Once the program is launched, those who are eligible and completed the pre-application survey will be invited to apply. Other citizens who are interested in applying will be directed to our application portal. Applicants will be served in a phased process designed to serve the most vulnerable individuals first. So those in phase 1 will be served first, then phase 2, and so on until all the eligible applicants have been served or until funds are completely expended. Those who are approved will begin the process of having their home repaired or replaced. Next slide. The Hurricane Michael housing program has seen some successful completions of home reconstructions, and this slide portrays a great example of one of those stories. This reconstruction in Ebro, Florida, Washington County, was of a three-bedroom, two-bath home where the awarded amount to complete the reconstruction was roughly $268,000. The key turnover was June 13th, 2023. The reconstruction included resiliency measures with impact-resistant windows, compliance with green building standards, and impact-resistant doors. Next slide. Another great success story we would like to share is of our Hurricane Ian housing program. This slide shows before and after photos of a reconstruction in Crescent City, Florida, in Putnam County of a three-bedroom, two-bath home. The total award amount to complete this reconstruction was $342,000. The applicant applied for this program on May 6, 2024, and the construction of this home was completed November 11, 2024, in just 205 days. The home's resiliency measures include impact-resistant windows, lead-based paint abatement, and impact-resistant doors. Next slide. On this slide, you will find our 100th home completed through the Hurricane Ian Housing Repair and Replacement Program. This was of a two-bedroom, two-bath manufactured housing unit located in Punta Gorda, Florida, in Charlotte County. The construction of this home was completed on March of 2025. Next slide. On the next two slides, we will find some housing success stories for Hurricane Irma. For this home, we can see the before and after photos of a stick-built, reconstructed, three-bedroom, two-bath home that is located in Jacksonville, Florida. The construction of this home was completed in November of 2023. The home's resiliency measures include impact-resistant windows, resilient roof system, and impact-resistant doors. On this next slide, we can see the before and after photos of another Hurricane Irma housing success story. This was a three-bedroom, two-bath manufactured unit completed in Clewiston, Florida, in Hendry County. The construction of this home was completed in November of 2022. Now I will turn it over to my colleague, Leisha Bohenna, our Chief over Economic Recovery.
Thank you, Audrey. The Infrastructure Repair Program will distribute funding to eligible subrecipients, such as units of local government like cities and counties, to fund infrastructure restoration and improvement projects in impacted communities. Eligible activities may include stormwater management projects, restoration or improvement of damaged infrastructure, and repairs to buildings essential to health, safety, and welfare of the community. When repairs of these buildings constitute an urgent need, this may include hospitals and emergency shelters. Priority will be given to projects with the most impact. LMI benefit in those in physically constrained counties as defined by Florida Statute 218.67 Pren 1. Additionally, infrastructure projects may incorporate mitigation measures which may help increase resiliency and reduce future risk. Next slide, please. The Hazard Mitigation Grant Match Program will finance the required 25% local match for projects funded by FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, HMGP. Priority will be given to projects with the most impact, LMI benefit, and those in physically constrained counties as defined by Florida Statute 218.67 Pren 1. In conjunction with FEMA HMGP funds, these funds will allow awarded units of general local government to execute necessary and significant infrastructure projects that municipalities may not otherwise have monetary means to complete, such as structural elevation, localized flood risk reduction, infrastructure retrofitting, and post-disaster code enforcement. Projects must meet both FEMA and HUD requirements to be eligible for HMGMP funding. To learn more about eligible HMGMP activities, please refer to your HMGMP handout. Next slide, please. Infrastructure programs will follow this process. Development of the action plan as related to infrastructure programs involve the unmet needs assessment, including input from citizens and stakeholders to determine the infrastructure repair, improvement, and mitigation need priorities in eligible communities. After the state action plan is approved, program design will ensure program activities focus on making long-term restoration and resiliency improvements for storm-damaged infrastructure, which can include water, sewer facilities, streets, and public facilities such as community shelters. During the application cycle due dates, instructions, application requirements, and fillable forms to assist potential subrecipients in applying for program funds will be posted to the FloridaCommerce website. Contact information for applicants' inquiries will also be posted. Following the application period, FloridaCommerce will score proposals and select projects for funding. Selected subrecipients will implement programs with monitoring and oversight by FloridaCommerce. This process may encompass making site visits.
So much. With that, that'll conclude our workshop presentation. If you guys would like to provide any input regarding the things we've covered today, we'll take some time for questions and comments. We'll take a 5-minute break to allow for some feedback. If you're here in person, you can input those questions or comments on the comment form. If you already have a comment card, please be sure to circle yes or no when turning it into the basket. If you'd like to speak or if you need a comment card, please see Maddie up at the front of the room here. So with that, we'll take a 5-minute break, and thank you for joining us online and in person. All right. All right, we're back. Thanks to everyone who submitted some comments and questions in person and online. I see we have a hand up. If you want, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and the floor is yours.
Morning. Thanks, Tom and team. Just had a question on the infrastructure program, and it's great that you guys are putting some money into match with HMGP also. Has any thought been given to coordination with the Resilient Florida program and DEP, as they have, 50% match requirement for implementation projects, and they just launched their new statewide portal that I think could potentially have some alignment with identifying LMI populations and also potentially 3-way kind of global match approach. But just curious if you guys had considered that at all with the infrastructure program.
Hey, Seth, this is Justin Domer. So that program is very new. It's a very exciting program. I know, Director Guthrie has spoken at a few things where I was there talking about it and how it's the more they learn about that program, the more it will kind of morph and change to the needs of the state. So there's not really an income requirement for that. So we've had the thought of how that can work in our world, but I'm not sure how it fits in right now with the HUD income requirements, and so, I think as they collect more data and understand what the needs are of the applicants, we could look at it, but I think it's a little early right now.
Yeah, just one thought on that too with their new portal. I mean, it's a pretty robust GIS portal, and I think that, and I haven't played around with it a bunch, but they could probably add an LMI layer. So for all those jurisdictions, all your mid jurisdictions that are impacted, as they're considering different projects and where they have projects that do have clear, LMI population benefits for different project types, to consolidate, resources in that, on the CDBG-DR side, at least for their applications. And I think the intent is to also use that as an application portal. So there could be some synergies there. Just wanted to mention it, but excited for what you guys are doing. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We do work closely with the mitigation department over at DEM, so we'll stay in touch with them on that and see if there's ever, any opportunity to even transfer somebody over or see what we can do there. But thank you for the question. Good question.
My name is Tom. I work CEO of HCA Florida Capital Hospital. I'm here today to not only speak on behalf of the many HCA hospitals across the state, but really reiterate the impact that all hospitals experienced during disaster 23 and 24. As I read through the draft action plan that was posted last week, I wasn't surprised to see that over 1/4 of stakeholders surveyed by the FloridaCommerce reported needs at critical facilities such as hospitals, among other things, as top of mind in the recovery process. Whether it's the continuous threat of flooding, loss of ability to remain open due to damaged public facilities or coastal impacts to seawalls, both private and public hospitals faced their own share of challenges during the disaster while also prioritizing providing uninterrupted life-saving care to the communities they serve. While FloridaCommerce finalizes action plans, we appreciate the continued recognition that repairing or hardening critical facilities like hospitals is vital to ensuring long-term recovery and better community resilience during future storms. We urge the state and local partners to remember that when disaster strikes, both private and public hospitals alike are looked to by local and state officials to coordinate with first responders to ensure that emergency health care remain available without interruption to the maximum extent possible. When recovery dollars at the state and federal level begin to materialize, we are encouraged by and appreciative of any opportunities under this action plan for hospitals, whether private or public, and other providers of emergency health care to partner with state and local governments to participate in infrastructure repair programs. These partnerships can potentially allow for comprehensive stormwater and flood prevention projects, hospitals that face flooding during disasters, on-site redundancy of vulnerable public utilities that threaten the ability of hospitals to remain open during disasters, and other projects that impact residents, especially those from low to moderate income or other vulnerable populations. Directly benefit from by ensuring that access to health care is as resilient as possible before, during, and after a disaster. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that. And you and your team coming today. You are our audience.
Since there are no other comments at the moment, please feel free still to type them in the chat feature if you do have some, and we'll be sure to address those as we work to keep you all informed as we move forward to our next few public hearings and addressing all your questions and keeping you informed as we move forward. So on the next slide, you can stay up to date with upcoming information as the development process continues. Some of this information includes a pre-application assessment as well as a local government survey. For these updates, you can visit our webpage at floridajobs.org/2023 and 2024 storms, or you can scan the QR codes found on this slide to receive either citizen updates and news, which is the blue QR code, or stakeholder updates and news, which is the green QR code. And we'll pause there for a few seconds just in case you all would like to scan those while we're on the slide. We thank you all so much for attending this public hearing. We appreciate your input and feedback. After the 30-day public comment period, we will revise the state action plan, incorporating the feedback received, and the final version of the document will be submitted to HUD in April. Please be on the lookout for updates regarding the state action plan, program status, and more. This information will be posted across social media platforms, on the website, and via email. Updates to the mailing list as well. Please scan the QR code on your handout or visit our 2023 and 2024 storms webpage to sign up for these email updates. If you have any further questions, please feel free to contact us at 2023 and 2024 storms@commerce.fl.gov. or via phone at 850-717-8404. Thank you again for attending.